Last seed is certainly quite the accomplishment for Alexander, and their team is very interesting as well. It almost looks like Alexander grabbed the Galarian Moltres that you'd normally see on Wolf Glick's winning Players Cup 2 team and decided to borrow it for a match and put it on his side of the field. I'm excited to see how it's going to gel with Alexander's team overall, since while I think everyone's familiar with how Colossal works, especially when partnered with Pokemon like the Dragapult and the Rapid Striker Shifu, I am not sure if everybody is as familiar as, something that looks sort of like Trick Room, but also sort of not. And, Reggie there too.
Yeah, well, Regieleki's there too. Originally he has to be there in this format. It's such a strong Pokemon that even when you have slow Pokemon like Glastrier and Amoonguss and Dusclops, you can't always be in Trick Room, right? So you need some type of fast option on your team as well. And Regieleki can hit those flying types like the Togekiss that Sohaib has on his side.
Yeah, breaking news. Regieleki is fast, Togekiss is a flying type Pokemon, and we are ready to jump into this first game. So let's go ahead and get started. Good luck to both Sohaib and Alexander.
Yep, so here we are in game one, first game of round one, and winners in top 16 in North America. Sohaib will have the Incineroar Togekiss lead on his side, and then the Galarian Moltres and Amoonguss is the option for Alexander on the top of your screen.
So an interesting lead for both these trainers. I like how Sohaib has gone for this lead, bringing the two Pokemon that can hit the Amoonguss and the Moltres the hardest on Alexander's side of the field. While both trainers do have access to redirection, and something like a Rage Powder and a Nasty Plot would be very nice for that Moltres to have, I think that Togekiss's ability to go for something like a Dazzling Gleam, possibly even get a critical hit on it, depending on what kind of Togekiss this is, will do a ton of damage. And if you're a Dark-type Pokemon like Moltres, you have to be careful about that.
Absolutely, you need to be worried if Alexander's team revolves around Galarian Moltres and making it be effective. You are not going to want to take a huge max Starfall from this Togekiss, who is deciding, Sohaib is deciding to Dynamax here on turn one. Togekiss, a Pokemon that has been absolutely rampant throughout all of Pokemon Sword and Shield's history as a Dynamax option, as a supportive option with Follow Me as well. It's able really to take advantage of the best of both worlds, being offensive and supportive. Alexander matching the Dynamax with his own in Galarian Moltres. This should let Galarian Moltres be able to take a hit from a Max Starfall if that is what Sohaib wanted to go for. But the Fake Out will go into Amoonguss, so there is no redirecting or spores on this turn. And Max Airstream into Alexander's Galarian Moltres there. Not the Starfall. Does get the crit. That could have naturally happened, but of course, this is a Togekiss we're talking about, so I think that was potentially boosted because of the Super Luck ability, increasing its critical hit chance. A Max Airstream on Alexander's side as well to match that speed tier there, so all the Pokemon, they're all of their speed boosted, but it's essentially the same speed because they both use Max Airstream.
Yes, but I have some news for you, Joe. So this is a open team sheet format, and we have the benefit of knowing that this Togekiss not only has the Super Luck ability like you suspected, but it's also holding a Scope Lens. So we're going to be seeing a lot of critical hits as this game moves forward.
Well, that's what Sohaib is rooting for. I know Alexander's not rooting for a bunch of critical hits here, but that Max Airstream will go into Amoonguss's Protect, so it is not able to fully protect itself, but it only takes a quarter of the damage there, so Amoonguss not too threatened by it. That will be a second Airstream boost, though, towards Sohaib's two Pokemon, and this Max Airstream from Galarian Moltres will take down the Incineroar there. So both Dynamax Pokemon going for the same options on these turns, but Alexander coming out on top because Moltres is still faster than Togekiss, potentially the Amoonguss can be faster than whatever switches in because it has 2 speed boosts, and Moltres did get a knockout here, so it is 4-3 on the Pokemon count.
Yes, and I'm glad you brought up the speed of these Pokemon. I think these Airstreams are absolutely critical because we've seen this Togekiss outspeed the Moltres every single time. So Sohaib has to keep going for those max Airstreams if he wants to ensure that Togekiss will remain to be faster even after Dynamax ends, at which point it would be very easy to go for the Dazzling Gleam to pick up that knockout on the Galarian Moltres. It's probably taken enough chip damage as well that it doesn't even need a crit at that point.
Tapu Fini will switch into that Amoonguss slot, so Amoonguss really not an effective first 3 turns here. Had the fake out, the protect, and then switching out into Tapu Fini. Urshifu is going to protect on Sohaib's side and wants to keep that Focus Sash intact. And a third and final max Airstream out of Dynamax Togekiss here. Thanks to that critical hit, that brings Tapu Fini well below 50% of its HP there. So 2 out of 3 crits, not too shabby for Togekiss here. A third max Airstream from Galarian Moltres as well. We're seeing a similar pattern here as both these Pokemon are flying types, so not only does it help boost their speeds, but it also has the same type attack bonus by being a flying attack there, so it does additional damage. And you have the Life Orb on top of that on Galarian Moltres, so not the weakness policy that you see very commonly. Alexander opting for Life Orb to have more upfront damage and not necessarily having to tank a super effective hit beforehand. You have that Life Orb damage right away.
Yeah, what I find interesting, though, is the fact that Alexander switched out the Amoonguss in that previous turn. Normally, when you're looking at a Colossal team like Sohaib is running, you would assume that the Colossal is going to be making an appearance. I mean, we already saw the Incineroar. Maybe it's something like Rillaboom, but if you're going to be keeping Amoonguss around for later, you know, yes, switching it does allow you to activate its ability of Regenerator so that it can heal some health back, but if you switch that into a Fire-type Pokemon, is that really going to be helpful? So Alexander took a lot of damage on the Tapu Fini switch-in as well there, so he really needs to make sure that this next turn counts. And unfortunately, when staring down a Togekiss that is most likely going to outspeed and go for a Dazzling Gleam for the knockout, that's going to be very tough.
Aqua Jet from Urshifu is not enough to take out the Moltres, and this Dazzling Gleam, as we've seen all 3 turns so far, Togekiss is faster than Galarian Moltres, so super effective Dazzling Gleam will take that out. Tapu Fini not taking damage because it protected there, but now we're back to a 3-3 count in this Pokemon battle. Tapu Fini around half of its HP, yet again thanks to 2 turns of leftovers recovery. So what is Alexander's response here? Either do you bring out that Amoonguss again for Rage Powder redirection, or reveal that 4th Pokemon that Alexander brought in Game 1, which turns out to be the Dusclops.
And that is exactly why you save the Amoonguss for later. If Dusclops is able to go for a Trick Room this turn, which it should be able to, assuming it's bulky enough to take a couple of hits, maybe a few crits, that will allow Amoonguss to outspeed everything else and deal damage and hopefully not have to worry about the Togekiss at all.
Surging Strikes from Urshifu. It is a resisted attack, but it does guaranteed critical hit, so it will connect 3 times onto Tapu Fini and knock it out. So the double target from Togekiss and Urshifu takes down Tapu Fini. Alexander is down to his final 2 Pokemon. As Dusclops goes for the Trick Room, Amoonguss is definitely going to enjoy seeing this switching in next turn 1, because it'll get a little bit of HP back thanks to its Regenerator ability. And it's also, Dusclops and Amoonguss are going to be the slowest Pokemon on the field, so they're going to be able to act first in Trick Room.
You gotta love getting the late game Trick Room when the Pokemon on the opposing side of the field are so fast. Now, if Amoonguss has access to Sludge Bomb, which is a poison type attack, it should be able to do a lot of damage to that opposing Togekiss. That Urshifu might be able to be knocked out by something as simple as a Nightshade from the Dusclops. So Alexander is still in this game, even though he is down the Pokemon count.
Nightshade is not enough, just barely. The Urshifu had enough HP to endure that hit, and then the Surging Strike from Urshifu will go into Dusclops. Of course, critical hit all 3 attacks, but is a much lower base power than the Urshifu counterpart in Single Strike. That's the trade-off when you have these Colossal teams, as Togekiss goes for the Air Slash into Amoonguss. It will get the KO. It's super effective, and there is the critical hit there, which Alexander definitely did not want to see that critical hit But for Alexander, at this point, it's just Dusclops versus the world. Sohaib has not revealed his fourth Pokemon. And what I'm mentioning, Gabby, is the trade-off with Urshifu Rapid Strike being the water type is it deals much worse against Dusclops being a ghost type than Urshifu Single Strike, who has that dark type Wicked Blow that always is a critical hit.
You are absolutely right, Joe. But the thing about this Dusclops in particular is that it has access to Pain Split and Nightshade. I don't think we're going to be seeing Pain Split this game because there just isn't enough health on the field for it to use, that attack. But if Dusclops is able to find a KO here, Pain Split whatever Pokemon Sohaib sends in, whatever that fourth Pokemon is, get its health back, and then play through these next turns, keep Trick Room up, time those Nightshades perfectly. There is a win con here for Alexander. It's going to be a bit slow, and certainly critical hits on critical hits on critical hits could put a critical hit in the path of that plan, but it is an option, and I think it's something that you have to play, out to, especially in a Game 1 situation. I want to also take a moment to take a step back and call out just how much damage that Amoonguss did to the Togekiss. If Alexander in a Game 2 or possibly Game 3 situation can find that much chip on Togekiss, knowing that Amoonguss can deal about 50% damage to it is going to be huge.
That was a smart play out of Sohaib with the Aqua Jet. Doesn't care about Trick Room being set up. Urshifu goes first, then the double target from Dazzling Gleam, and Sohaib Mufti has won Game 1 of this set against Alexander Stubbs.
It's up to Alexander to answer that. So I think that's enough of us sort of guessing what's going to happen. Let's jump into Game 2 and see how these trainers adjusted.
Absolutely. So Sohaib is one win away from moving on here in top 16 in the North American region finals, and Alexander is going to have to adjust that game plan to force a Game 3 here. For now, it is the same leads on both sides. Sohaib having Togekiss and Incineroar again, and then Amoonguss and Galarian Moltres for Alexander.
It's interesting to see that Moltres make an appearance, but you have to assume that Alexander is going to play this a little bit differently. We know that the Amoonguss was flinched in turn 1 by the Incineroar. That's something that you have to keep in mind. But I think more importantly, if you are going to Dynamax the Moltres again, which assuming you bring the same Pokemon seems like a pretty smart play, you just start firing off those max airstreams into the opposing Togekiss. Even though Amoonguss is scared of the Incineroar, given that Alexander probably has that Tapu Fini in the back, I think you just have to look at, okay, Togekiss is the bigger threat. It completely ran through my team in Game 1. Let me make sure that can't happen in Game 2.
Alexander will switch the Amoonguss out here on turn 1. Instead of taking the Fake Out for no reason, the Tapu Fini is going to switch into that slot in case Incineroar went for Fake Out again. It's not like it would matter since Tapu Fini is not going to attack this turn. Sohaib, no need to adjust his game plan from Game 1. Will go for the Dynamax Togekiss yet again. The dangerous thing Alexander has to look out for, there's no such thing as a safe switch in against Togekiss because of Super Luck and its ability to critically hit every time, essentially. That's how it feels like when you're facing off against a Togekiss. It's going to crit you on the way in. And Alexander will also have Dynamax Galarian Moltres here. So already a little bit of an adjustment from Alexander by having that swap. Does Moltres kind of concede the max airstream battle here, knowing that Togekiss is faster, or will it just go for max airstreams again? Fake Out from Incineroar onto the Tapu Fini is switched in, and the max airstream from Togekiss will also hit Tapu Fini, and Tapu Fini is able to tank it this time, going down into the red, even with a critical hit. That shows how specially bulky Tapu Fini can be, taking that critical hit max airstream. Moltres on Alexander's side will go for a max airstream yet again, bringing Incineroar down to pretty much exactly almost half of its HP. You would assume a second max airstream would get the KO, just like it did in Game 1.
I would assume that as well, Joe. A switch to interrupt or to keep the Amoonguss safe But still, Moltres targeting down that Incineroar. While I understand the concern, Incineroar is one of those Pokemon that you have to worry about if you're running Dusclops as that last Pokemon to get Trick Room up once again. We know that this Incineroar does not have access to Darkest Lariat. It only has access to Taunt, and something like a Rage Powder can handle that. So I think it's great that Alexander is aware of the Incineroar and how much trouble it's going to cause eventually. But right now, Togekiss is still a huge Dynamax problem.
And here is that Dynamax Togekiss going for a second Max Airstream on Moltres. Looks like it did not get the critical hit that Sohaib was looking for. Of course, when you run the Super Lux Scopelands combination, you kind of start calculating critical hits into your damage, hoping that it happens, but it didn't work out for Sohaib there. Max Airstream from Alexander, and that will take down Incineroar, just like we saw in Game 1. So Galarian Moltres, maybe the Max Airstreams are to take down Incineroar, obviously, but you're kind of just trying to keep level with the Togekiss at this point, because if you just let the Togekiss get 3 speed boosts and you don't really react in some way, then it's really hard to adjust. And if the Togekiss is significantly faster than both of your Pokemon. So by going for the Max Airstreams, even though Moltres is slower, it's able to keep that Tapu Fini, who would usually be slower than Urshifu, at this point is faster than this Urshifu.
Yeah, and that also forces Urshifu to lean harder on the Aqua Jet rather than the Surging Strikes. And Aqua Jet only hits once, isn't guaranteed to be a critical hit. It's certainly the weaker option of those two moves, which is good. But, Sohaib still has a commanding lead at this point in time. Even though the Pokemon count is in Alexander's favor, this Togekiss is free to deal some really big damage. And I don't think Alexander can return a knockout this turn to keep that Pokemon count in his favor.
There was yet another critical hit out of Sohaib's Togekiss on that spot. That will take down Tapu Fini, of course. A little more insult to injury there, as the critical hit didn't necessarily matter. But a third Max Airstream from Moltres will bring Urshifu down to its Focus Sash, that 1 HP, ensuring that Urshifu will get an attack off this turn. Will it be that Surging Strikes of its own that we saw in Game 1? And yes, that is the option here. So 3 critical hit Surging Strike attacks from Urshifu here will bring Moltres down relatively low, especially since this is the last turn of Dynamax. So both of these Pokemon are going to go back down to normal size. Moltres will gain an additional boost to its special attack thanks to its Berserk ability. When it goes under half HP, it increases 1 stage of special attack. The only thing I worry about here for Alexander is, even though you gain that special attack boost, 1, Togekiss is faster than you, and then 2, the Urshifu has Aqua Jet access, so it can also just, get rid of that speed priority and go for Aqua Jet into Moltres as well.
I don't think the Urshifu has to go for the Aqua Jet on the Moltres for the knockout, only because Togekiss is faster and has access to Dazzling Gleam, which will connect no matter what. But you're absolutely right, Joe. That is something to keep in mind. I think what Alexander is trying to decide right now is, do you send in the Amoonguss or do you send in the Dusclops? Do you protect your Moltres for a turn with a Rage Powder? Or do you just try and go for Trick Room and tell your opponent, yes, you will be able to knock out my Moltres this turn, but I'm fairly confident that a Dazzling Gleam plus a Surging Strikes from this Urshifu will not do enough damage to knock out my Dusclops. So therefore, you either have to Air Slash it and hope for a flinch, or I'm getting Trick Room up. And once Trick Room is up, I'm again in that situation where Amoonguss can come out onto the field and deal damage or otherwise find a way to stop Togekiss, because Togekiss is still the Pokemon to beat here.
Absolutely. Togekiss taking yet another knockout for Sohaib's side there. So Galarian Moltres goes down, and Alexander is down to his final 2 Pokemon. This Surging Strikes from Urshifu will target the Dusclops, of course having the 3 critical hits there, just showing how strong Urshifu is. That's a neutral attack, bringing the Dusclops down to under half of its HP. And then Trick Room out of Dusclops, like we saw in Game 1. That will twist the dimensions, making the Dusclops and Amoonguss faster. This time around, the Amoonguss is much healthier. The Dusclops is at half health, but yet again, it's still 3 Pokemon to 2, and Sohaib has not revealed that 4th Pokemon either in this game yet.
But what Alexander does have going in his favor is that Dusclops has taken so much damage. A Pain Split into Togekiss plus a Sludge Bomb from the Amoonguss could potentially knock it out. The other thing that Alexander could do here is, as Togekiss is a flying type Pokemon, like I said earlier, does not make contact with the Misty Terrain, could go for a Spore and just hope that you get those sleep turns going.
Nightshade will take out that pesky 1 HP that Urshifu had remaining there, so that is a knockout that helps out Alexander. And the Spore from Amoonguss will put Togekiss to sleep, so this turn it's going to be asleep. Sohaib has a chance to wake up next turn, so that's something he's going to try to root for in this spot so he can air slash the Amoonguss. But there's also the chance that Togekiss does not wake up. So what will Sohaib do in that case as he finally reveals the 4th Pokemon he brought to this match, which was the Rillaboom?
Some interesting information to keep in mind as well when we look back on that turn with the Aqua Jet into the Amoonguss. This Amoonguss is holding the Focus Sash item, so even though the Aqua Jet only did a couple HP worth of damage, that is enough to break the Focus Sash and ensure that whenever Togekiss does get an attack to connect with Amoonguss, which I would assume Sohaib is hoping for at this point in time, that will be a knockout and Amoonguss will not be able to hold on.
Pain Split out of Dusclops will bring it back relatively healthy, take some of that HP away from Rillaboom and give it to itself, and then the Sludge Bomb from Amoonguss takes down Rillaboom. Rillaboom never even getting an attack off in this game here. Togekiss is still asleep too, Sohaib really relying on a turn 2 wake up there, but he did not get it. So now it is Togekiss against these 2 Pokemon, which thanks to that Pain Split, they're both really healthy.
They are, and they're going to keep getting healthy thanks to the help of Sohaib's grassy terrain, which he unfortunately cannot take advantage of. So it is Sludge Bomb and Nightshade time. I think Alexander is going to need 2 turns in order to secure the knockout, so we'll see if he can find them.
Togekiss, does it wake up this turn? Does it even take the Sludge Bomb? Yes, it does. Brings it down really low. And Sohaib stays asleep for a 3rd turn there. That Spore was really the MVP of the game for Alexander there, as if you got an air slash crit, maybe you could have tried something, but of course Dusclops has the access to the Nightshade anyway, and you were under 50 HP, so it looked like Alexander had it wrapped up thanks to those 3 turns of sleep. That was a great game 2, and I'm happy we're going to get to see a game 3.
Yeah, talk about adjustments. I really loved how Alexander that game because I am so excited. I really hope that we see a bouncy electric friend, but it looks like we're also getting, or we're instead getting hard Trick Room, which I'm not going to complain about.
Oh, and Sohaib making an adjustment. Togekiss was so critical in those first 2 games, but it is not the lead here. Instead, Sohaib said, it's time to stop messing around. I gotta bring Colossal out. Dragapult Colossal is the lead, and Dusclops Amoonguss is a really smart adjustment for Alexander, understanding that Alexander pretty much won that game off the backs of his Trick Room, so why not lead it now?
Yeah, Rage Powder plus Dusclops means that most likely you're going to be able to get Trick Room this first turn. Now, I would assume that Sohaib would normally go for the Dynamax on the Colossal, but we're already seeing an adjustment in playstyle, picking a Pokemon that can hit the Dusclops a bit harder, assuming it can find its mark.
Dragapult will be the Dynamax option instead of Colossal here in Game 3 for Sohaib, so that is something that I don't know if Alexander was ready for. This Rage Powder, though, will be coming out from Amoonguss, so this Max Phantasm that went towards the Dusclops instead targets the Amoonguss, and Amoonguss is able to hang on. It will lower the defense of both Amoonguss and Dusclops here, but that Life Orb boosted Dragapult does a lot of damage, and Heat Wave from Colossal does connect on Amoonguss. There's that small chance it could have missed, but he will knock out Amoonguss, so no more Rage Powders, no more Spores, anything like that. This will guarantee Dusclops setting up Trick Room, so now the slower Pokemon will attack first under these Twisted Dimensions, but hey, Colossal hasn't been hit with any water or fire attacks. It's still a really slow Pokemon right now, and it can definitely take advantage of Trick Room against this Glastrier and Dusclops.
Alexander making another adjustment to better align with a Trick Room strategy. That Glastrier is going to be a fantastic target for Dynamax in this match. Having the speed in its favor and having some attacks that can hit both these Pokemon well. I really do love how Sohaib went for the Dynamax on that Dragapult, though, in the past turns. You know, this is one of those differences on these 6 Pokemon that we did not see from Players Cup 2, but we are seeing from Dragapult going into Players Cup 4. This Dragapult is offensive. You know, it has a Life Orb that it's holding. It has access to Dragon Darts, Phantom Force. Like, this Pokemon is ready to deal big damage. Gone are the days of light screen and support options on that Pokemon.
Yeah, I love that adjustment out of Sohaib with his Dragapult because he can still support Colossal if he needs to, but Dragapult's actually acting like the powerhouse that it was at the beginning of the format. Haze from the Dusclops will eliminate those defensive drops that are the one defensive drop that it had on its side, and Max Hailstorm from Glastrier is able to cleanly knock out this Dragapult. So it will set up the Hail as well, but Dragapult really only getting to use one turn of its Dynamax there, so not as effective as Sohaib would have liked in that spot. A Chilling Neigh is going to increase Glastrier's attack by 1 stage, and then it's all down to this Colossal, who has the Heat Wave, which barely does anything to the Glastrier.
That Glastrier is wearing a nice assault vest, which certainly complements the boost in its health that the Dynamax form gives it. So again, running a much more Trick Room oriented strategy with this Glastrier, taking advantage of its Chilling Neigh ability to get that attack boost. If Glastrier is able to use these 3 turns of Dynamax to get 3 attack boosts on top of whatever other max moves it's going to use, that's going to be huge and may allow Alexander to just sort of get those knockouts and bring him into the next round of the winners bracket here.
Yeah, Alexander has found himself in a position from where they were in Game 2, where it looked like it was almost over and they would be sent down to the loser's side. Those 3 turns of sleep changed things around, and then now in this game, the Trick Room right off the bat has really put Alexander in a position to win here. This Glastrier is going to be very slow on the Trick Room, so it can go for any attack it wants. The Nightshade from Dusclops targeting down Colossal, and then Max Quake from Glastrier into Colossal as well. That is 4 times super effective. Colossal never stood a chance against that attack, especially with the 1 Chilling Neigh boost, and now there's going to be a 2nd Chilling Neigh boost, so that is a 2 boost to the Glastrier's attack there. The special defense boost as well, not really relevant at this point against the Urshifu on this turn, but the close combat from Urshifu is super effective into Glastrier. Obviously, Assault Vest not factoring into that, so that will do a considerable amount of damage, but really not enough to take down this Glastrier at all.
No, and looking at Sohaib's last Pokemon with the Rillaboom, Glastrier is going to have an easy time knocking out both of these Pokemon, provided it can connect and attack. Alexander doing a good job of using the Hail to his advantage as well, allowing the Hail to deal that little bit of chip to the Urshifu to break its Focus Sash so that this turn he can guarantee the knockout. That close combat did so much damage to Glastrier in that last turn. You have to assume that Sohaib is going to go for a second one, which means Alexander needs to find the knockout on that Urshifu ASAP. Dusclops, on the other hand, free to go for another Nightshade, maybe even go for a Pain Split on that Rillaboom if that's something he's worried about, but still a very strong position for Alexander in this endgame.
Pain Split from Dusclops into Urshifu will take a little bit of HP away from the Urshifu, and who does the Glastrier target? It will go for Max Hailstorm on this 3rd turn of Dynamax, targeting Rillaboom under its Protect. That is how strong those 2 Chilling Neigh boosts are on Glastrier, as that was a quarter of the damage Rillaboom was supposed to take. Urshifu does finally take down Glastrier here, but those are an incredibly effective 3 turns of Dynamax out of Alexander there, bringing the Rillaboom really low on health, the Urshifu very low on health. They are both in the Nightshade range, and of course with Hail on the field, that's actually bringing them lower and lower. Or excuse me, the Urshifu is not in the Nightshade range, but the Rillaboom is.
Yeah, and the Rillaboom has to be, I think, the first target here for that Dusclops, just because it is a more offensive variant than what we've seen in the past. You know, this Rillaboom has access to some really powerful attacks, and if it has the opportunity to connect one of those attacks with Tapu Fini especially, that could give Sohaib the opening he's looking for to try and win back this game. So even though the Glastrier was knocked out in that previous turn, putting Rillaboom within range for a knockout by Nightshade honestly is just as good as a knockout, because Dusclops still has Trick Room to his advantage here. And again, Alexander just keeping calm and getting those KOs as needed.
Rillaboom had one chance, and it was getting that double protect. Unfortunately for Sohaib, that did not work out for him, so this Rillaboom is able to be targeted by Dusclops, and that will get the knockout. Moonblast, of course, going towards the Urshifu. The Protect will save it this turn, but now it is 2 Pokemon to 1, again in a spot where Urshifu knows fighting type attacks and water attacks, which are really neither a good option against Tapu Fini.
Unfortunately, no. So unless something a little bit strange happens here, which I don't think is possible at this point in time, it looks like Alexander will be winning this winners round 1, 2 games to 1, and moving on to the next round of the winners bracket. Sohaib, on the other hand, is still in the tournament, as this is a double elimination bracket, dropping down to the loser's side. But, you know, let's take a moment to reflect on that match, because Joe, you mentioned something, I believe it was towards the beginning of game 3, that I